values in Python are considered to be true, which is why the print statement will be executed within the if block. Remember, your if statements need not be as simple as they have been so far. You can perform a more complex conditional check within your if, and Python will correctly evaluate that check. If it's true, all of the statements within your if block will be executed. Observe the use of the double equal to for our comparison operator, and observe that we have expressions on either side of the comparison. This is perfectly valid. How do I know what statements lie within my if block? Well, all of those statements will be indented. If you run a command which looks like this is an error in Python. There is an indentation error. When Python encounters the colon after your if conditional check, it will expect an indented block, which will contain the statements that make up your if block. Let's make our if checks a little more interesting. I'm going to set up two variables here and assign them values. Salary is equal to $1,000 and expenses are equal to $770. I'll now run an if conditional check to check whether a person is living within his or her means. I have a boolean variable called living within means. I perform an if check to see whether salary minus expenses are greater than 0. If yes, then I set living within means to be equal to true. I'm going to execute this bit of code and then print out whether I'm living within my means or not. Living within means is equal to true. That means our condition evaluated to true in our if check. Here is an example of a little more complicated if check. If 100 greater than 50 greater than 10. There are two conditions to be evaluated here. Both of these are correct and our print statement is executed. Python first evaluates if 100 is greater than 50, that is true. It then checks to see whether 50 is greater than 10, that's true as well. Here is another more complex check. If 100 less than 50 less than 10. This is clearly false, which means the print statement will not be executed and nothing will be printed. Let's see some more examples of how you can check for conditions using if statements. I have salary and expenses. Salary is equal to $1,000. Expenses are $770. And I have the boolean living within means, which checks to see whether salary minus expenses is greater than 0. In our case, living within means will have the value true because salary minus expenses is indeed greater than 0. Observe how I've used the logical and operator in my if statement. If living within means and expenses greater than 500, I'm going to print out to screen, I'm glad you're saving, but perhaps your expenses could be lower. Living within means is true and expenses are greater than 500, so this statement will be printed out to screen. Our if condition evaluates to true overall. You can use the logical and or and not statements within your conditional checks as well. If 2 is less than equal to 5 or 7 is greater than equal to 8, print this out to screen. We know that one of these conditions, 2 is less than equal to 5, evaluates to true, which means our entire condition will evaluate to true because of our or logical operator. Our if condition overall evaluates to true and our print statement is executed. Your if block need not be restricted to just one statement or one line of code. You can have multiple indented lines of code that make up your if block. Here I have two variables, salary and expenses, and a third variable's savings, which I've assigned to 0. If salary is greater than expenses, I assign the result of salary minus expenses to savings and I print out my savings for the month. Notice that I have specified two lines of code to be executed within my if block. As this condition evaluates to true, Python will execute both lines of code and the result is printed out to screen. Let's make our if statement a little more powerful. Let's specify multiple branches of code that may be executed based on a condition. If salary is greater than expenses, we'll print out to screen savings for the month is salary minus expenses.